Hello everyone and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the MLB DFS Core Pick video for today, Friday, June 7th. If you're joining me for the very first time, first of all, welcome in. Second of all, this is how today's video will be structured. We'll be going over a recap of yesterday's picks, seeing how they ultimately end up turning out. After that, we'll get moved over to RotoWire and talk about the weather report for today. That is going to be any game on the main slate that does have a double-digit chance of rain. And then after that, we'll get moved over to FanDuel, talk about my core picks. It's going to be one pitcher, four hitters. It's going to be based on a combination of past performance versus their respective opponent, as well as some recent history. And then last but not least, we'll get moved over to my cheat sheet and talk about my top GPP teams to stack for tonight's slate overall. That cheat sheet is 100% free and it is up on the Sports Affiliation website. But without further ado, we'll get started with that recap of yesterday's picks. So at the pitcher position, we went with Ronaldo Lopez, $9,500, got to 37 points, so he was ahead. He ended up being the third overall pitcher on yesterday's slate, 1 point behind second place. Tanner Houck was the top pitcher who was also in the cheat sheet yesterday, but he was a little bit more expensive with some of the other guys that we did kind of pay up for a little bit. So we did not get to him. We got to Ronaldo Lopez, was still a hit regardless though. And then at catcher, we had Tyler Stevenson, $2,800, got to 18.4 points, so he was really good hit yesterday. Second base, we had Gleyber Torres, $2,900, got to 13 points, so he was a hit as well. And then in the outfield, we had Aaron Judge, $4,800, got to 18.4, so to give him a hit as well. Unfortunately for the MLB prop of the day, we had Aaron Judge recording a hit. Unfortunately, he went 0 for 3 yesterday. He went 0 for 1, then had 2 walks. Then this game had the rain start, and I was like, oh crap, this is going to be a rain-shortened game. He's going to go over 1 with 2 walks, and this is how we're going to lose it. Fortunately enough, the game did come back, but unfortunately enough, he did go for 2 in his last 2 at-bats. So it was unfortunate for MLB prop of the day people, but we'll be back at it today for those of you following that as well. Last but not least, we had Alec Burleson, $2,700. Got 6 points, so he wasn't a guy that helped our lineup. Wasn't really a guy that hurt our lineup, so I had to give him a push overall. So a pretty solid day all around. As long as you had some other decent plays, you had a pretty easy chance of cashing on yesterday's slate. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to RotoWire and talk about that weather report for today. So there's only one game on the main slate that does have a double-digit chance of rain. That's down in Kansas City for the Royals and the Mariners. There's a 71% chance of rain down there. Probably not 2 teams that I was getting to too much just in general. If you were going to get to one of these teams, it's probably just going to be the Mariners going against Daniel Lynch. Some of those guys that do hit left-handed pitching pretty well, but probably an easy game to avoid if that's something you want to do on tonight's slate overall. But if there's any changes to this game or any other game in terms of weather, well, they're listed down in the comments below. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to FanDuel and talk about my core picks over there. So once again, it is going to be one pitcher, 4 hitters, and it's going to be based on a combination of past performance versus their respective opponent, as well as some recent history. So we're going to start off at the pitcher position. A lot of good value plays here today. So if you don't want to play Logan Webb, who I do have listed here, you can look at a lot of different options. Whether that's Lance Lynn, Austin Gomber on the opposite side of that game, Chris Bassett's out there. Justin Steele's pretty cheap right now. Framber Valdez is really cheap right now. Had a rough start versus the Angels earlier this year, but dominated them last year in his 3 starts. So a lot of good value options out there today. I ultimately ended up on Logan Webb. He's averaging just over 32 fantasy points per game. He was kind of off to a slow start to the season too as well, but $8,900, pretty cheap price tag for him just in general, and the type of upside that he can have. He's got some pretty decent history versus the Texas Rangers in the past, and he did have 45 points against them in his lone start against them last season. So obviously, if we can get anything close to that out of him today, it's going to look pretty good overall. 4 wins on the season, and his ERA is under 3 at this point in time at 2.95. So definitely do like the upside that he does present today. Seems like a pretty safe pitcher too at the same time as well. Really, like I said, it was the beginning of the year where he didn't do quite as well. And then there was the Boston and Philadelphia start, which, pitching in Boston and pitching in Philadelphia are not the easiest places to pitch, no matter who you are. So definitely do like the upside of him tonight overall, going against this Texas Rangers team whose offense really hasn't lived up to expectations. And I know Corey Seager's dealing with a little bit of a hamstring injury, so we'll see whether or not he ultimately ends up playing tonight as well. Then we're going to move down to our hitters, and we're going to start off with catcher Tyler Stevenson. Once again, $2,800 payoff for us yesterday, and the history's there for him once again. 8 for 13 with 1 home run versus Justin Steele in his career. I do see the note here, too, to say that he did have x-rays on his hand. Apparently got hit by a pitch yesterday, so hopefully he ends up playing tonight. Obviously, if he doesn't, we can switch off to somebody else. But he's on a modest 7-game hitting streak. 4 of those games have been multi-hit games. He does have 1 home run during that time span, as well as 4 double-digit performances. So definitely one of the hotter hitters in all of baseball right now at this point in time. And you'll see even from yesterday to today, the average is up to 267, 6 home runs, 20 RBIs on this season. and he's averaging right around 8 fantasy points per game at $2,800. Looks like a really good value option. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on his situation, whether or not he ends up playing, since he did get hit by the pitch yesterday. And then we're going to move down to third baseman Jose Ramirez, $4,200, so a pretty expensive price tag here, going against Ryan Weathers of the Miami Marlins tonight. He's 2 for 2 versus him in his career, and Jose Ramirez has at least 1 hit in 7 out of his last 8 games. 4 of those games have been multi-hit games, 2 home runs, and 5 double-digit performances, so pretty good as of late. Obviously, he's kind of leading the way in all of baseball for RBIs with 60. He's got 17 home runs and a 276 average just in general, averaging over 14.5 fantasy points per game at $4,200. Definitely looks like a pretty good value there today. Obviously, if there's another player that you really want to pay up for instead of Jose Ramirez, you could obviously play them instead, but he looks pretty good overall today. I had a little bit tougher time with the core picks outside of Tyler Stevenson and Yordan Alvarez, who we'll be talking up next. But Jose Ramirez was definitely a guy I thought warranted some consideration just in general today. And we're going to get down to Yordan Alvarez at $3,700. He is 4 for 9 with 2 home runs in his career versus Griffin Canning, the expected starting pitcher for the Los Angeles Angels tonight. He has at least 1 hit in 8 out of his last 9 games. 5 of those games have been multi-hit games, 3 home runs during that time span, and 5 double-digit performances. So Yordan's been hitting the ball extremely well as of late, up to 285 average now, 12 home runs, 28 RBIs. Only averaging 10.5 fantasy points per game at $3,700. I think that number is really going to go up, but he was one of those guys that did kind of have that slower start to the season, then really turned it on, had a little bit of a slump again, but seems like he's been hitting the ball really well once again, though. And then last but not least, we have his teammate in Jake Myers at $2,700. A guy that's kind of been moving up in the order for this Houston Astros team. He's 3 for 6 versus Griffin Canning in his career, so some pretty good history there. I will say, though, as of late, he was kind of on this little hot streak, but since then he's been a little bit hit or miss lately. I think it's like 4 out of his last 8 games that he's got a hit. So a little bit more risk here today. Obviously, if you don't want to play Jake Myers, you can definitely switch him off to somebody else. The Astros team in general is a little bit banged up. I would like to play Kyle Tucker. I would like to play Alex Bregman if I knew that they were going to be healthy and in the lineup for tonight. Kind of up in the air whether or not those guys ultimately end up playing or not. But if those guys ultimately don't end up playing, Jake Myers is probably going to hit up higher in the order once again. $2,700 looks like a pretty good value play. 266 average, 6 home runs, 24 RBIs, averaging 7.5 fantasy points per game on the season. So I definitely do warrant some consideration towards him and some of these other cheaper Astros bats. Obviously, Mauricio Dubon, if some of those other guys don't play, he's probably going to be in the starting lineup. Could be an interesting value play as well. But with that being said, if you go with these 5 players that I do currently have here, you have $12,700 remaining, just under $3,200 per player. So a decent amount of room and flexibility remaining. Whether you want to pay up for another star bat, you can definitely do that and then pay down in a couple other spots. Or if you want to go with a little bit more balanced approach, that's definitely something you can do on tonight's slate as well. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to my cheat sheet and talk about my top GPP teams to stack for tonight's slate overall. So once again, this cheat sheet is 100% free. It's up on the Sports Affiliation website, so definitely be sure to check it out as you're building out your lineups for tonight overall. But the 3 teams that I do have to stack for tonight's slate overall, we got the Houston Astros going against Griffin Canning. They have hit him pretty well in the past. Obviously, 2 of their players are in the core picks, in Yordan Alvarez and Jake Myers. Obviously, if Kyle Tucker and Alex Bregman both play, then they are going to be 2 other interesting bats from that team. If they don't, Mauricio Dubon is going to be a value play that I will consider playing because he'll likely start in place of Alex Bregman if he doesn't play. And then if Kyle Tucker misses, he might actually start in place of him too. So he is kind of just a versatile chess piece that is going to be a pretty good value spot. Does have a little bit of pop, does have a little bit of speed at the same time as well. And then we move over to the Toronto Blue Jays. They do not have a lot of history in the past versus Hogan Harris, but he did not pitch very well for the Oakland A's whatsoever last season. So definitely like the Blue Jays in this matchup. Danny Jansen and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa both have home runs versus him in his career, although there is not a long list of history there for any of these Blue Jays bats. And, Blue Jays kind of been hit or miss in terms of offense throughout the season, but starting to hit a little bit better as of late. So definitely do like that matchup versus Hogan Harris. And then last but not least, we got the Dodgers going against Cody Petit of the New York Yankees. No real history here. The only guy that has faced him in the past in this Dodgers lineup, Kiki Hernandez, who's 0 for 2, but I do like the upside of this Dodgers lineup, going against kind of a quad A pitcher in Cody Petit tonight. But with that being said, that's what I do have in terms of the recap, the weather report, the core picks, and the top GPP stacks for today, Friday, June 7th. As always, if you have any questions related to MLB DFS, be sure to drop them down in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. And then with that being said, I'll be listing all the other updates down in the comments, whether that's the weather, any starting pitcher changes that could happen throughout the day. Obviously, we've had quite a few guys get scratched over the last week and a half or so, so definitely be on the lookout for that. And then I will also be posting all of these starting lineups as they do get announced throughout the afternoon and early evening. So definitely on the lookout for that, especially as we get closer to lock. But with that being said, if you are brand new to my channel, checking it out for the very first time, or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, we have MLB DFS in terms of the core picks Monday through Friday. Got the CFL DFS video coming out once a week, typically on Wednesdays. And then my UFL DFS video for this week for the playoffs will be coming out later today. So definitely be sure to check out those videos as well if that's something you're into. And then last but not least, if you're interested in prop betting, if you're interested in sports betting whatsoever, be sure to check out the links and promo codes down in the description below for Prize Picks, Parlay Play, and BetUS. If you are a brand new user on any one of those three sites, when you sign up, make your initial deposit, you will get a first match deposit bonus. For Prize Picks and Parlay Play, it's a 100% match up to $100. And then for BetUS, it's a 125% match up to $2,500. So some pretty great opportunities to be had out there. And then with that being said, if you have any other additional questions related to that whatsoever, feel free to reach out to me, whether it's down in the comments or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. I'd be more than happy to help you with that journey as well. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have for today's video. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in MLB DFS tonight.